Thank you for being with us one more time on Tissue World TV here at Tissue World in Miami, where at the moment we're meeting the keynote presenters from the main conference day itself, who presented on stage with some fascinating insights into their various fields of expertise. With us right now from Stratfor, Rodger Baker, who's the head of Strategic Alliance, that's correct,
Strategic Analysis.
Strategic Analysis at Stratfor. You had a fascinating presentation to the audience this morning, Rodger, on China. And obviously there's a massive focus on what's going on in that very large part of the world at the moment. What was the fundamental message behind your presentation, sir?
I think the most significant thing to do is to look at the changes in Chinese industrial policy in the context of overall where China is going in the world system. And this is a country that's had 40 years under the economic reform and opening. As this year marks the 40th anniversary of that. It's really run its course. Their ability to follow that high investment, export-led, high growth-led economy. And it's now time to shift the structure of the Chinese economy. And they're looking to up the value of their supply chain from start to finish inside the country. Their entire industrial policy is being tightened up. And they're really trying to make themselves now into world-class players, both internally and externally. And that's creating a lot of shake-up because everybody has seen China sort of as the place you go, you get your cheap stuff made, they're not really competitive with you, they buy your stuff, they make your stuff. And they're looking to come out onto the international system as they make their own stuff, they make better stuff, and they're going to sell it out into the world.
Absolutely right, yet China remains a magnificent mystery to many people who are non-Chinese.
It can be a very complicated place to work through and place to try to understand. And I think, again, it's looking at it not from just individual actions that they take. Many of the actions the Chinese government takes appear to make no sense from, say, just an economic perspective.
To a Western viewpoint.
Particularly to a Western viewpoint. Oh, that doesn't make, why would you do that? That doesn't make economic sense. We wouldn't do that. Well, the challenge is not to think what would we do in the Chinese situation, but how do they see the world? How do they see China in that world, and how do they make those decisions? And the two big drivers in that are, one, social stability internally. This is still 1.3 billion Chinese, and any efficiency you add into the Chinese economy may mean massive unemployment that you've got to deal with.
Yeah.
Number two then is their position strategically and how they see their role in changing really the global economic structure, which has rules that they see were built really by the United States, by the Europeans in the Cold War and in the post-Cold War period to give the North Atlantic the dominant role. And since the late 80s, global trade, trans-Pacific trade has exceeded transatlantic trade.
Peering as we did behind the red curtain this morning, thinking about the tissue industry specifically right now, China doesn't want the world's garbage anymore, and there's a massive impact for us inside the world of tissue as well.
Yeah, China this year put in the ban on taking in recycling for pulp, along with plastics, along with metals. There are multiple visions of that. They said, one, we don't want to be garbage collectors. Now, it had been very convenient, right? Shipping containers went from China to other parts of the world. Instead of coming back empty, bring them back loaded with garbage. So there was a convenience there. They don't want the pollution. One of the things on Chinese economic growth is that the social structure, society, particularly in the coastal area, has moved up the ladder, right? Well, what happens? You start getting into that NIMBY, you start getting into the ability to say, you know what, I don't want pollution here, I don't want garbage here, I don't want toxins in my soil and in my air. So social pressure has pushed the government in this, and then they really do want to say, what can they do to up their own industry and not just be that processing place for the developed world.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the best advice that you've got in mind at the moment for tissue people at this stage, what can you tell us most of all at Tissue World to watch out for into the future? Because we're seeing change everywhere.
Well, I mean, it's really going to be watching, one, how do the Chinese respond to the pressure that's being pushed back against them by the United States, by the Europeans, particularly in trade and investment? Because that's going to, they may not be relaxed and calm on that. They may start pushing back and feeling their oats as well. So I think that's one. And two, really watch what they do in their special economic zones, in these special little pockets, because those are where they test out policies in kind of an isolated control group. Things that work, they can spread out further. Things that don't, they can pull in. And then finally, you know, as you look at China's advancement in the world, it may be that the challenge is not to compete with China, but to find ways to partner with specific companies because they're looking for the technology. They're going to get it one way or another. And in some cases, it may be valuable just to tag in alongside them.
Fantastic. And the insights that you provided from Stratfor this morning, absolutely superb. So a real pleasure to have you with us in the studio. Thank you for sharing your expertise, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Tissue World.